Welcome to Inspirational Leadership. I'm your host, Kristen Harcourt, and I'm super, super pumped to introduce you today to a friend of mine. I love getting to have dear friends on the podcast. And today I'm going to be speaking with Clare Kumar, who helps highly sensitive professionals optimize their performance. Being a highly sensitive person herself, Clare understands the challenges and superpowers that come with this trait that affect about 20% of people. Drawing on her love of science, Clare encourages greater respect for neurodiversity, leading to sustainable contributions, fulfilling lives, and bottom line results. Welcome to the show, Clare.
Oh, thanks. It's always great to see you, Kristen.
I'm really, really excited about this conversation today because I think it's really important. But before we start getting into even defining and understanding highly sensitive people a little bit better, let's start by giving our audience an opportunity to know a little bit more about you and your journey and your story and what got you to this work you're doing in the world.
Oh, well, thank you. That mention about science explains a little bit of why I started my educational career really with a degree in biology. So it finally kind of makes sense, 30 something years later. So I followed my interest, but I realized I didn't want to be, well, it's not that I didn't want to be, partly didn't want to be a doctor. Decided a teaching system was going to be too constrained for me and couldn't stand the smell of formaldehyde, so I wasn't going to work in a lab. And took a degree then in business administration and fell in love with marketing. So interesting career all through primarily marketing, primarily telecom, but really I got to explore a lot of different things. So a year in finance where I learned it wasn't for me. um, Sales support, product development, um, internal communication, one of my most favorite jobs, and an amazing experience in loyalty marketing, which was cutting edge marketing way back in 95, 96, and led teams, worked internationally, Tokyo, Toronto, Montreal, and enjoyed very much a lot of the learning and development and challenge of the corporate world, but found the construct to be very overwhelming. And I didn't have the language for high sensitivity at the time. But I had in 2001, I had my son, 2003, my daughter. And it was after I had my daughter, I realized I needed to change something. And I decided to really explore. Looking back, I did this joy inventory of all the jobs that I'd had, whether it was high tech or volunteering for a startup, entrepreneur, startup organizations, whatever it was. I came back and I figured out that actually serving tables as a waitress way back when I was putting myself through the second business program was really some of the greatest fulfillment I had. And I thought, what's that about? So I realized it was this ability to transform an experience in a short time, which totally connects to what I do now as a coach, right? And the part I liked too was, you got tipped well right afterwards based on the degree of impact you had. So I realized my attention span might be short and my need for impact was high. And so, in 2005, when my kids were little, I started an organizing and productivity practice when I lived in Montreal. And I fell in love with using my innate skill for creating order and working with people. And so, having those before and after transformations, right in front of me. And it wasn't until people were telling me, but your work is deeper than just moving stuff around, it's life transforming. And it was two clients, one who was a life coach and one who was a corporate employee who asked me to coach them, that inspired me to go and get formal coach training, which I did at Royal Roads. I guess it's 7 years ago now, and just love it. So brings me to today, where really there's nothing in my calendar I'm not looking forward to. So I feel really blessed about that. I'm on stage or virtual on screen talking about organization, productivity, diversity, expanding diversity and inclusivity to include neurodiversity and high sensitivity in particular. Um, yeah, and working with individuals and now teams. I have a 12-month engagement with an education institution coming out where I'm coaching their leadership team. So just loving all of what's opening up. And, you know, the last point is I live this. I took a day off on the weekend, but my day off was reading the book Golden, which is all about silence, the value of silence in a noisy world. It's just, I'm hungry for all this stuff and I get to bring that and serve. And so lots of great joy, as I imagine a lot of that relates to what you do too, Kristen.
Yeah, it's so cool, Claire, because I think there's a lot of reasons why you and I are good friends and connect, but it's so interesting to see those different pivots on your journey. I hadn't made the connection until you were talking about. I also loved waitressing for multiple reasons, but it really had a huge impact on me, and just even terms in what it looks like to create amazing experiences for people,
Mhm.
and also fully connect. And you get to connect and be with all of these different people. And as someone who is incredibly curious, it really fulfilled that need of curiosity. And I think what you're also noticing with as a coach, there wasn't really the wording back in the day around this is what it means to coach, but you and I probably have been coaching for
Mhm.
many, many, many years without
Mhm.
having a label for that's what we're doing, because a lot of times it's even just deeply connecting to the human in front of you and
Yes.
hearing and being present and creating space for powerful dialogue.
I think so. I think there's something intuitive about it. And even in choice of words, I mean, people have said, have you been trained in NLP? I'm like, I have not. Well, you're using NLP language. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry. I can't explain what I'm doing. But the trait of high sensitivity, one of the things in there is that we have a higher number of mirror neurons than other people. And so we're innately wired to connect. So if I see you nodding, I might nod too. If I see you put your hand here, it might just happen that I'll put my hand there. We don't have to work at these natural things which build rapport, which is amazingly powerful in coaching, as you will know, to build that connection within seconds.
So true. So true. And so starting off, just talking a bit more about high sensitive people. Am I saying it properly? High sensitive people,
Highly sensitive people,
highly
HSPs. Yeah,
sensitive people,
yeah.
HSP. I'm gotten so used to saying HSP. So
Mhm.
start off by just helping us understand, what does that mean? Like, what does that look like? And how does it show up both, in the world at large and in
Yeah.
organizations as well?
Yeah. So, as you said, 20% of people on average. But if you look in different verticals, healthcare, counseling, therapy, arts, what I've been noticing in the coaching population and in the organizing and productivity world, it's more like 50, 60%. So please, if you're in an organization where you're very clear that empathy and compassion is part of what you do, or creativity is part of what you offer, look for much higher levels of high sensitivity within your population. So it's actually a trait, it's a normal way of being, but it's included within the realm of being neurodivergent, which means non typical in the way the brain works. So at on average 20%, that means 4 out of 5 people aren't like highly sensitive people. So even though it's normal, it's a little bit tricky because the neurodivergent conditions, disorders, ways of being that exist, a lot of them come with diagnoses, or someone may not even be able to access a diagnosis because they can be expensive to actually get to that point. But when you've got that label, perhaps ADHD or autism, dyslexia, Tourette's, there are accommodations available to you. But highly sensitive people are kind of under the radar. In fact, there are a lot of neurodivergent conferences and awareness days that I'm sticking my hand up going, what about HSPs? It's not 1 in 7, it's 1 in 5. And it's interesting that high sensitivity is often very present in these other neurodivergent conditions as well. So it's worth sort of understanding a little bit that broad scope. It's really evenly split between men and women. You will find that within the highly sensitive population, 70% are introverted, 30% are extroverted.
Mm.
So this is probably why you and I get along as well. We like meeting people, we like connecting with people. The challenge if you're highly sensitive, and I'll take you through the key elements of the trait, is that it can be also overwhelming to be an extrovert and out in the world, because being out in the world invites all of that experience, and it can often be very, very overwhelming. Yeah. So let me take you through my version of what Dr. Elaine Aron came up with and identified as key elements in the trait back in 1996. If anybody wants to go back and start really where Dr. Elaine Aron did the work, she's got a book called The Highly Sensitive Person. And the 25th anniversary edition, the one in yellow behind me there,
Mm.
came out last year.
Okay.
And it's brilliant to get an understanding. Um, so there's a model, I like to call it the SEED model, SEED, because I like to think that highly sensitive people have everything within them that they need. And I like the analogy of having that seed. Now, you mentioned off the top strengths and challenges. Yeah, I call them strengths and struggles that we have. And each element of SEED brings different strengths and different struggles. So S stands for sensitivity to subtle stimuli, to any stimuli. If you're sensitive to the subtle stimuli, you're sure sensitive to the loud ones too, right? So we have this ability to notice what's going on. We'll catch the energy shift in a room. We'll catch the humidity rising. We'll feel the texture on the inside of a pocket and think, I don't want to use that. We'll feel the tag on our shirt. If you're like me, you will have declined reading a book for your book club because the paper was too rough. And people might think you're a little hard to please, a little difficult, but this is the sensual sensory input that we have can be, we are so heightened to it that it's taxing. So it's like our nervous systems are always on, sensitive, yes, perceptive and responsive as well. The strength in this noticing is we will be the eyes and ears that really have a pulse on what's going on. We will sense. So when I was organizing, for example, and a parent might say, well, my kid never puts the stuff in the laundry hamper. There's always clothes on the floor. And I would suggest perhaps taking the lid off the hamper, because then when, making it a game of basketball and tossing the clothes into the hamper, there wasn't a barrier. That barrier, I call them speed bumps, when they're internal or externally roadblocks to things happening. They're sometimes there, but we don't notice them, but they can be in our way. So as a coach, I spend a lot of time looking for those and listening for those. So the noticing is a total superpower. The first E is for empathy. And I know in your work, you must have been talking a lot more about the need and the leadership need for empathy. I've been giving leadership workshops through the pandemic. And at first, when I was talking about this soft, hard skill, if you're not innately wired to be empathetic, you have to build a practice of it, right? But highly sensitive people are naturally empathetic. We are the people that we see something and we're immediately feeling the other person's experience. So it's wonderful because, again, it's that tuning into others and what might be needed. It can also be, given the events of the past few months in particular, incredibly emotionally draining. So we might have to limit how much information we're taking in, or the format. No nightly news videos. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah. The second E is emotionally responsive. So brain imaging will show that our brains light up with all of the emotions that we feel. So we can be, at the positive, incredibly self-aware. We can also be, if we're not grounded, centered, well taken care of, we can become triggered and unleashed. And I think this is what I think may have happened to Will Smith at the Oscars. And then you see an eruption of emotion, an expression, and on reflection, a grounded, centered person would have been able to perhaps choose something else. So there's a lot of work for highly sensitive people. And this is something I do in the group that I run and the coaching that I do, is to build the skill to regulate not only ourselves, but also regulating what's around us to the sense to the in a way we can, or choosing what you partake in, right? Just figuring out if it's designed, is a system set up for
Right.
new position, needs to look at it and say, am I set up for success here? Or is there something here that's just, there's no way anyone will be successful in here. So looking for the conditions within which you'll thrive can mean less tax on you going through everything. So uh,
I want to
it's
pause you for a second
key.
because I don't want to lose this. It's
Yeah.
reminding me so much of
Mm.
because my son definitely has HSP, and we work a lot with self-regulation and co-regulation because he's 9, and it's beautiful, the co-regulation. But it's reminding me what we did in terms of not setting ourselves up for success when we went to Disney World.
Mm.
It's so intense for him. It's
Mhm.
overstimulation times 1,000. And so what does that look like? Okay, maybe we're going to go for 4 hours of the day and then go out somewhere where we're completely in quiet, as
Yeah.
opposed to putting him in an environment like that for 12 hours. It's too intense and too much for him.
Can I, can I just say I totally inflicted this on my kids? They were 3 and 5. And
Yes.
my friend, Andrea Canny, love her to bits. She was working at Disney. She's like, I can get you in for the day. So we had
Yeah.
one day. We were
Yes.
going to maximize the heck out of this,
Right.
right? So you can imagine these two kids at 10 o'clock at night with fireworks. And both my kids are highly sensitive with different expressions.
Yes.
And we're carrying these kids who are tired. Their hands are over their ears. They don't want to see a fireworks show. Like, what?
Yes.
You crazy parents, what are you doing? So, and then having to carry your child from the fireworks back to the trail, the monorail or whatever.
Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah. Disney, if you're going to plan something like that, there have to be, and actually I would love to talk to, I know somebody who was working at Disney and talking about design, where the oasis of calm
Yeah.
for sensory restoration in the day, which then leads to the workplace. And episode 2 of the podcast that I've launched all on this topic as well talks to HOK, global architects and designers and planners. And we talk a lot about having diversity of environment in the workplace and having opportunities for rest. So, yeah, there's opportunity in the design as well to invite everybody to rest. I mean, and the other thing I'll just throw in here is a point of expanding who you're thinking about when you think, do I need to care about this sensitivity?
Right.
You know, traumatic brain injury, PTSD, all of these, high anxiety, all of these things actually lead to situational or potentially temporary sensitivity. So there's a much broader population that will benefit than the 20% that are likely highly sensitive. So thinking about your population in terms of, you know, we know that a lot of people want to stay working from home. What do you think that's to do with? That's to do with a lot of overwhelm, not potentially just in an open concept office,
Yeah.
but also in the whole act of getting to work. If we measure the micro stress and major stress in traffic delays, 17-inch subway seats, a down coat in minus 32 walking, there are a lot of challenges that present. I was exhausted, and why I left the corporate world is I wasn't able to continue working from home. I had to go through a commute that drained me, and my kids were in a daycare in the other direction. It was
Yeah.
just too much.
Yes.
So, yeah, so design of our environments and choosing what we participate in and having autonomy, super important for sensitive people and anybody going through any kind of sensitivity. So I can bring you back now to D,
Yes.
and that's depth of processing.
Yeah.
So depth of processing looks like creativity. It looks like connecting the dots. It looks like deep problem solving. For that work, as Cal Newport would call it, deep work, you often need to have an environment that really sets your brain up for success. For a lot of people, that's a quieter environment. I won't say purely no noise because that's not normal in our experience,
Yeah.
but very quiet. And then you can get this rich thinking. It might take a little longer, but you can invite that connection. You can't rush it. Give me a good idea, Kristen. I want 10 good
Right.
ideas right now, right now. Can you give me sometimes we need a little patience for this. And the challenge, though, is that our highly sensitive people can be connecting so many dots that they've lost the picture and we're spinning in possibility. And we need to have strategies to simplify some of the decisions. And that's worked for me in choosing speaking gigs that I say immediate yes to, or other ones that I decide, no, this is one to negotiate. But depth of processing can be a real asset too in the realm of the traits that show up.
I love when you talk about seed and the model and what it's all about and everything that we talked about here. I can see how it's very much in tandem. The individual can be doing things to think about what best supports them, but then the
Yeah.
organization, there's so many taking a step back choices and reflections they can be making. Even as I was hearing you talk about, the environment that the workplace is doing,
Mhm.
or the Disneys, or I'm thinking even conference provider when they're designing a conference, what are you doing? I'm actually, even as we're noticing, I'm like, I can even see elements of myself with HSP as an extrovert, that I just notice sometimes it's so much intense information. And I think that we learn sometimes on our own coping mechanisms. And I know you and I have been like this at a conference where we think, you know what, my brain is pretty full right now. I don't need another session right now. Let's go sit in the lobby and talk for the
Yeah.
next hour. But, in terms of mindsets, the
Yeah.
mindset as a high achiever, doer, ambitious, it's like, no, you need to. But I've learned over the years, that's not serving me. When I start to notice that my body's like, that's enough right now, I pull
Yeah.
myself out and then do something to get, a one-on-one conversation or go
Right.
for a walk, and then do that throughout the conference, because I don't want to leave the conference. It's going to take me 2 days of recovery because of the intensity.
Oh yeah, the number of conferences I've fallen sick and been in bed at is off the charts. And just learning over time to navigate it and celebrate the joy of missing out, not the fear of missing out, right? JOMO, not FOMO. So that and there's a constant struggle, yes, as someone who's ambitious and a hungry learner. But as you would know, active listening uses a lot of brain cells and brain glucose, and it's drawing down our energy. So yes, we need to refuel and rehydrate, but we also need to stop the incoming for a period of time. That's why I'd really like to see more restrooms be restrooms at work, and have places for pause where you don't necessarily need to sleep, but taking breaks throughout the day to restore even 5 minutes horizontal, eyes closed. Wow. Wow. You can do a lot of things in a short time to really ground and center again. But I found 15 to 20 minutes and the power nap being an amazing, amazing tool. It's like a brain reboot. All
Yes.
your files know how to find each other again.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So when we start to talk about organizations, and again, you and I are very passionate about this, when we start to think about humanizing workplace, because
Mhm.
workplaces are filled with a bunch of humans.
Yes.
And again, those skills that we're talking about when we start to look at empathy and being a mindful leader and being fully present and
Mhm.
listening and all of these really important skills, these are the human skills. And I believe the most important skills, because without this as your foundation, it doesn't matter about the other things in terms of
Mhm.
business outcomes. When we start to see the great resignation, which I've been
Mhm.
calling the great awakening, because it
Mhm.
is like individuals are recognizing what they're willing to tolerate. Now organizations are having to take a step back and also ask, how am I contributing to these situations?
Elon, how you
Yeah.
doing with this question? Huh? Can we talk, honey? Like, yeah,
Yeah.
I see a lot of leaders, and my expertise is in productivity, right? Productivity and sustainable performance. That's
Yes.
what my deep learning is in.
Yes.
And I've really come to believe productivity is personal.
Yeah.
So for any leader that's holding on to that, well, I work best in the office, therefore I think my people should just get their butts into the chairs, the derriere into the chair, if you want to be, francophone about it. I think it's a blind spot. It's a blind spot to assume that other people work the way you do. Having coached hundreds of people on performing at their best and looking at the way brains are wired, there are so many different and rich ways to get to the same result or even better results if you allow for different approaches. So, yeah, there needs to be some room for, um, we talk a lot about it being about control. I really think it's a lot more about convenience. It's like, I remember when I was forbidden to work from home after successfully proving that I could do my job from home, and my job was 90% on the telephone. Back in the day, we didn't have video conferencing, and I could do my job 90%. And I said, I'll come in 50%, and any meeting you want.
Yeah.
Nope, sorry. I want you in the office. Even if I'm traveling, I want you in the office. So some control, but I also think convenience, because we didn't we did have call forwarding to the cell phone when I was working in telecom. We had one number identification and things like that, but we weren't we weren't thinking about we were thinking, I just want to know where my team is, and I don't want to work harder as a leader. Asana just recently, another example of not working hard enough as a leader to allow for the autonomy that will let your team thrive. They had I think it was maybe the first, it was written up in the press. They had a hybrid meeting of the leadership team. So some people were in a room and some people were remote. And it turned out the people in the room were talking over each other, and there was no successful integration of the remote people. So their solution was not, should we look at our culture of communication and respect and see how we might infuse a better model of inclusivity for people in the room at home? It was, we're just not going to do this. We're not going to do any hybrid meetings. It all has to be all or nothing. So that means then that you've got 20 people on the team. You've got 19 people in the office and one away. It's now a remote meeting. You've now sucker punched the reason for coming into the office and the social connection and sidebar conversations and everything. Like, no, leaders, you need to do more work. You need to be more intentional. You need to think about how you're designing the experience so that people want to be part of it.
Right.
And, I think we now need in meetings, we need the task focus. We need also the time focus, a timekeeper, and we need an inclusivity prime in every
Mm-hmm.
meeting to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that we're making sure that the people remote can still hear. Are they with us? And do they have anything to say? They have to make the invisible visible. In my home organizing practice, we need to, I'm thinking it applies here now. I call it VAMP. It has to be visible, accessible, manageable, and pleasing. All
Yeah.
of your way you organize something and arrange something.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to see who's there. You need to make them easy to access. You need to make it possible and manageable to spotlight a person who's on screen and make it visible to everybody in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to make the whole experience pleasing. Otherwise, ain't nobody going to want to be there.
Well, and I think what you spoke to is really important. And it's around that, first of all, it's not all or nothing, right? It's either this or that. It's like, yes, and what does it look like
Yes.
if that didn't work? How
Yeah.
can we expand on this? What did work? And I think the other thing I see a lot is too many times making assumptions around what
Yes.
people think and what people want without actually asking the questions. And this shows up a lot with hybrid. And there is not, and I know everybody listening knows this because you're going and talking about this in the organization. There is no one size fits all because we're unique humans. And yes, does that mean, well, there's going to be no decisions that this is what we're doing across the board? Yes, let's be realistic here. There are going to be some things in terms of how an organization is running. We're going to say, yeah, these are our holidays or, different things. However, there are times where it's really going to serve that individual better to be doing their work from home, to speak to the environmental. They're having to do deep thinking, if they're needing to have that strategy time, if they're needing their white space, what that looks like for that individual to be able to do that effectively, and somebody else, it's not the same. And so talk to me a little bit. I think I want to start with the organization, and then I'd like to actually talk about a little bit more on an individual level.
Sure.
A lot of people listening to this podcast are high performers, right? So they love productivity. They're a little bit addicted sometimes to productivity. And I love your connection because I talk a lot about this as well. It's around sustainability, and it's not about sacrificing one over the other. Oh, I'm highly productive and I'm ambitious and I'm achieving everything. Yet my life is very low down on the totem pole. I'm not spending time with others. I'm not being there for my relationships, all that kind of stuff. We can have well-being and productivity together. And I know you
Has to
also
be.
talk about this. We can have both.
Well-being is a foundational piece
Yes.
of productivity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So talk to me about this. You tell me where you want to start. We can talk about it from an organizational level in terms of how they support that, or we can start at the individual
Mm.
level around what they're doing to be able to honor that, wherever you're
Let's
feeling called.
let's talk at the organizational level, because one of the things that I think is really important to understand, we were not taught how to be organized coming up through school, unless it just happened through really fantastic role modeling. We were not taught, we're still not taught how to be well organized in school. So if you've had time management training, yay, you've got a piece of it. There's a lot involved in managing or structuring your schedule so that it serves you. But it's structuring your space, structuring your tools, thinking about communication. It's it's much more complicated than people think. And that point that productivity is personal, no one approach works for everybody. No one office chair serves all bodies, you know? And so we need to think about, how do we support people? If you've got a high performer who you recognize is just not keeping up with deadlines, not communicating effectively. This is the kind of coaching I do, because it's amazing. There's a greatest assumption. Somebody in my family just says this: I don't understand why anybody needs your services. Like, why don't people just get, like, I don't understand why they don't understand how to organize their time and space. So it's like that bias again. If I can do it, why can't somebody else do it? And there are there are depths of skill that have sometimes been built through curiosity or problem solving, in my case, to calm my world down. And there are different levels of motivation. So there's an axis of skill and motivation at play. And you can have somebody who is, oh my gosh, I just love another opportunity to organize something and make it efficient. And I'm really jazzed for that. And I'm motivated and inspired. And I'm really committed to that. And you can have somebody else that is like, oh yeah, I'd like to get that done, but I have no energy to figure out how to structure it. And so there's a gap somewhere. You have the people I work with most, I call them wishfully organized. They see it, but they don't know how to get there. And so it's building practical skills around, oh my gosh, I mean, one of the biggest, most profound things, that this is organization and individual in tandem, right? Because what is your culture saying right now in terms of response time required to respond to an email or a text or an incoming request? What is your culture saying? Is it like one of the big box stores that, of my very first coaching client, used to demand their organization a 1 hour return time limit on email? Like, do you not understand what you're doing to cortisol for everybody
Yeah.
in their day, right? People are not allowed to turn off in the construct. We now, because of Amazon and the wonderful convenience of it, have an expectation that, why should I have to wait more than 2 or 3 hours for something? Pick up in 2 hours at the store, you know? Settle down, settle down. When I'm coaching people, we have an hour, 90 minutes together, depending. And I said, so you're not taking a call here, right? I need you to do this every day. I need you to give yourself, and I need the organization to support this. 90 minutes in the morning, for sure. At the beginning of the day, get your own roadmap attended to before you're putting out fires everywhere else. Being able to focus on something meaningful, right? But the organization has to talk about that being important and preserving focus time. A second one in the afternoon, if you can get it, you are winning. If you've got 3 hours of uninterrupted work time, that's great. Beyond that, your brain's going to be tired anyway. So then you can have some of the engaged shorter tasks and you can pop in a power nap. But we need our cultures to make it okay to take the focus time and to take the restorative time and to build that psychological and neurological safety into the day.
And, I think that's where I see such a big disconnect, Claire, is the words they say. Yeah, you don't need to be in back-to-back meetings. We support you doing.
Right.
Yet the
Right.
culture doesn't support that.
Right.
Sometimes they're saying, we don't have meetings on Wednesdays, or we don't have meetings on Fridays. And the people who are booking the meetings on Wednesdays and Friday are the senior leadership team that are, so
Yeah.
they're saying
Yeah.
one thing,
Yeah.
but they're not creating a culture. I'm going to use the word culture here because that's where I feel like really
Yeah.
supports it, that's actually built in for that to happen. So that I can't tell you how many, Claire, where it really is back-to-back meetings to the
Oh yeah.
points that they have to then work later on, sometimes in the evenings after the kids have gone to bed, because where are they doing the to-do items or action items from all the meetings they've been in back to back all day?
Yeah. So here's the other piece of that. And this was happening back in telecom in 2001. Same thing. Same thing. The moms I was witnessing, they would work their 8 to 5. They would go home, get dinner on the table, and they would work 9 till midnight. And I lobbied the COO of the company saying, can we have like reduced work weeks or flexible work weeks or something? Because I'm seeing people frying before my eyes. So um, I wanted to make another important point about the culture of supporting what needs to happen. Oh, two things. So one, we need restrooms that people are actually encouraged to use. So how are you talking about rest? Oh my gosh, I remember when I started in telecom, I pulled another all-nighter. How many did you do this week, right? It was grit and extreme self-sacrifice. That's what we talked about. No one came in and said, oh man, I had the best sleep. Oh man, I just took a nap in the afternoon. Look at me. I got creases on my cheek, but look at how my brain's working now, right? So, what if we made a commitment to talk about the acts that are actually driving stamina, not deterioration and burnout, right? So, that's number one. Um, oh gosh, and I keep slipping the second. Well, the second one is we think that aiming to 100% full of a calendar is a good idea. Right now, at best, we're like at 115% for most people. So we're trying to jam in, we're double booked, triple booked, we're doing things on the weekend and the evenings and so on because we're aiming for 100. Guess what, folks? You need to be aiming for 85. You need to be aiming for 85 because that will allow you time to respond to fires. It will allow you to put a nap in if you need it. It will allow you to also say, oh my God, this opportunity is so good. We're going to jump on it. And so there'll be breath. Just as you need breath in your space to feel comfortable, you need breath in your calendar. So leaders managing workload, talk about the elephant in the room and really understanding this is where individual skill at mapping their task to their calendar to be able to actually visually look at it and go, I don't have any time to take anything on, or yes, I do, because the individual deep work needs to show up in the calendar as well as all the meetings. And mostly it's not. It's showing up as the 2 hours or 3 hours in the morning or afterwards. But if we actually think about the time we need and block it in the calendar, for ourselves and for our commitments, we can then go to our leader and say, actually, I'm already 115%. There's a problem. And then the leader has to design the work not to overwhelm the employee, but to invite the best contributions.
Exactly. And I think that's where part of that onus is. And it goes both ways, right? It's that individual that's deciding this is what the calendar looks like. This is what I'm proactively by
Mm-hmm.
design
Mm-hmm.
creating. And then I'm going to also have conversations when it gets to the point I'm done, I'm drowning. I can't take any more on.
Yeah.
What's going to happen here? Are there other people where we can delegate the work? No, we already have other people who are also feeling like they're drowning. Well, then something needs to happen. We need to hire another person or maybe we need to deprioritize some of our goals, and we can't have all 10 goals in 2022. Maybe it's going to be 5, right? It's being
Yes.
realistic around. I
Yeah.
think when we start to really take a step back, and I mean, I see this, I'm sure you've seen this with some of the senior leadership teams where the number of priorities, I'm like, no, 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 no. We
Yeah.
need to drill down. We can't have this many priorities. What truly are priorities? And
Yeah.
then now we're going to get super focused on this. We're going to have everybody now aligned with these priorities. What I also see when that's not happening up here at the senior leadership team is, okay, this is the priority. now we've moved over here and now we're going to go over here. Now we're moving back over here. It doesn't optimize. It creates inefficiency. And anyone with HSP, even more so, I'm thinking like how intense that is for them when they're
Yeah.
constantly being moved all over the place and there is no focus.
Well, yeah, because a lot for highly sensitive people in particular, we are very attached to value aligned work. And as being full of empathy, we care so much about that quality output. We might step towards perfectionism. We might step towards people pleasing and keeping everybody happy. And depending on the level of self assurance, self confidence, self worth, self expression, and practice what I call playing graceful defense, coupled with these time management skills, then we can step into self advocacy in an effective way. But a lot of people, they try it. And then there's the question, is the leader listening effectively? One of my coaching clients told me a few months ago about, she put her hand up and said, yeah, I'm drowning. I really can't take any more on. And the leader sent her an email with more tasks. And they had a conversation about it afterwards saying, really, like that was not bluffing. And the leader realized I shouldn't have sent that email. So it's the two really standing in and looking at what's going on and looking at well-being and looking at inclusivity of that human and everything else that's going on around them in their lives, right? Is there a loss in the family? Is there a flood? Is there, like at my place, construction drilling between 9 to 5 every day, which is why we're talking first thing in the morning? It's what's going on in someone's life that they're navigating. And do we have room for the strategic deprioritization of things? Oh, I said, talk to my daughter. I called it strategic reprioritization. She's in university,
Yeah.
and one of the course load is designed to stress the student population, right? So I had to have a conversation with her, reliving my own first year experience where I had to strategically reprioritize,
Yeah.
deprioritize a course to the summer to
Yeah.
time manage the load so I could
Yes.
bring more attention and thought to it.
Yeah.
And instead of failing the first year because of that choice, I had an 85 in the course in the summer. It was knowing the system and parking that drive. I'm not a quitter. We have to be, yes, celebrate grit and hustle. Also, really look for the people that know and can protect their limits. Those are the people that are going to be able to go the long haul.
Exactly. Exactly. I think that managing the energy piece is so, so, so critical. And again, who cares if you're achieving all those things if you're completely burnt out and can't enjoy any of it and can't
Yeah,
enjoy your life, right?
yeah,
I
yeah.
just again encourage anybody listening. And if you are noticing that you are feeling burnout, your health is your wealth, and that is not something you want to be sacrificing for
That's right.
any job, for any organization. And if you are noticing that you feel like that, this is your sign to take a step back and ask yourself some important questions
Mhm.
around what's driving that behavior and ultimately where's that going to get you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Where does the drive come from? And a lot of people who come to me are looking to make sure they are being as effective and efficient as possible. And we find there's a lot of opportunity to manage things in different ways. A lot of it's turning off notifications and getting that 90 minutes to 3 hours in the day where they can actually get meaningful things done without fragmented, disrupted thinking.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think you're speaking very well as well before to the unplugging piece, right? Because if there is
Mhm.
this expectation that every time an email comes in, bing, 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 that's now urgent. That is where you're constantly moving your attention. It's not necessarily urgent,
Yeah.
but the email, and now your email owns you then instead of you owning your day.
And can we call this out? Can we call this out? Because I just did, there was a podcasting conference, and 2 weeks before the conference, I got an email and it said urgent. I'm like, urgent what? Urgent. Here's the information to access the platform where you can start setting up your schedule for 2 weeks out. I wrote back to them. I said, that was important. It wasn't urgent. And I said, we don't need a call to urgency. This is why CNN is on the news right now for redesigning what they call breaking news. Because breaking news is broken at this point. Even in Canada, we're doing the same thing. Breaking news. And it's like, shut up. It's like, we don't need more stress. We don't need more stress. So are we celebrating? Are we crafting our communication with thought for neurological safety? For not spiking the nervous system and poking the people? Are we keeping things calm so we're actually, normally we're designed to respond to threats that were intermittent, not chronic. We've created chronic threat and we need to silence it. When I was giving communication workshops about email, I used to say, put your ping pong paddle down.
Yeah.
Then the ball stops.
Yes.
Stops.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
enjoy the silence.
Yes.
Right? You're part of the problem if you're pinging and ponging rapid fire. You're not reading the email thoroughly. You're giving a quick response without thinking about it. If we could infuse some patience, the challenge is 300 emails. How can I do that? Well, stop replying all would be probably useful. I see this in cultures of communities I work with more when I'm speaking and we're setting up the talk, and there'll be reply all. And I feel like I need to reply all because they have a culture of keeping everybody in the know. And I'm thinking so many of these emails are just time thieves.
Yeah.
Time thieves. So,
Yeah.
so much opportunity,
So much
right?
opportunity. And people are going to get to have other ways to get to know about you and your work. But I always like to give my guests an opportunity to leave a final thought, whatever is showing up for you right now as a final thought for the audience.
Oh, well, thank you. I think because this is a passion project, and for anybody who's watching a video, you can kind of see it on screen. I had little business cards made up, and since I'm not going many places, I feel like I have a fancy dress and know where to wear it. But what I'm showing is happy space. And happy space is a movement to inspire a more tender world. And the tagline is everyone deserves a happy space. And you can find it at happyspacepod.com because it's the podcast. It's also a complimentary online community. It is a quiz there to find out if you are a highly sensitive person as well. So if you think this could be you, or you think it could be someone on your team, it's a fun, lighthearted, less than 2 minutes quiz that people really enjoy their reflection. And there's events. And today, for example, I'm having one of my monthly chats where people come together and we're talking, but today about the HSP family. So there's lots of opportunity to engage if high sensitivity is something that you want to explore. I'm working largely with HSP professionals now, and the goal is that we've been designing the world to get the best from the most and thinking that's fine. Just get the best from the most. But we've been sacrificing the most from some of the best minds. And I really think it's time to stop.
Beautiful. Such important work, Claire. I encourage everyone to check it out. And is there any other place you want to direct people in terms of your website, Claire?
Yeah, well, if you go to happyspacepod.com, it will go to Happy Space, which is on my website, which is clarekumar.com. So either way, I'm going to try and lead you to some of that work, but you'll see everything about speaking and coaching there as well.
Amazing. Thank you for being here today, Claire.
Thank you for the conversation, Kristen. Yeah, and I'm thinking about all your listeners out there and wishing you an awesome day of making beautiful choices.
Amazing. And to everyone, wherever you are in the world, we're sending tons of love. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.